higher ed has been significantly impacted by COVID-19, forced to adapt and evolve seemingly overnight. What does the future hold for our local higher learning institutions across degrees and levels? How will the value of undergraduate education evolve as a result? And how are schools adapting to serve the needs of the many students? And why and how can the business community support their efforts? Today we'll cover the needs of the new normal workforce and how we can all work together to secure an equitable future for today's students. And we're joined by a great panel of guests to help us answer these questions. Before I introduce them, I want to thank the organizations that helped make this possible. And those are coming right up, hopefully. Here we go. Yep. So there's our three organizations that help make things possible today. That's Dallas College, Texas Women's University, and the University of Texas at Arlington College of Business. And we have a personal connection here at DCEO to all of those campuses. One of our other editors, Bianca Montez, our online managing editor, is a graduate of both Richland College and UT Arlington. So we are thankful for her. Last year we had an intern for 2 semesters who was at Brookhaven College, who now is at Northwestern. It's probably going to be my boss one day, so look forward to working for Suha. And this semester we have another intern who just graduated from Texas Women's University. So we are completely, her name's Plamity Afaso, and she's awesome. So we are fully entrenched here at DCEO with these 3 local institutions. So thank you guys for training up some great interns and staff members. So we're going to introduce our 3 panelists. So we will start off. They're going to share a little bit about themselves and their institutions. So we'll start off with Harry Dombroski. He's the Dean of the University of Texas at Arlington's College of Business. Harry? I think you're on mute, Harry.
My apologies. Thank you for allowing me to participate in this great panel. And as Will said, my name is Harry Dombroski. I'm the Dean of the College of Business at UT Arlington. I've been the Dean for a little over 2 years now, and I'm not an academic. The majority of my career, I spent in the business world primarily as a Senior Vice President of Finance with Hunt Consolidated, located in downtown Dallas. And after I retired in October 2017, I was recruited over to become the Dean of Business here. UTA is it's a wonderful place to be. I love the mission that our university serves. We are an R1 university, and we've passed all the tests necessary to become Texas' next tier 1 university. We're in the holding pattern right now to make sure that we maintain our metrics. We also are a Hispanic serving institution and one of only 14 institutions in the country that are designated R1 and Hispanic serving. We're a large university. We have about 46,000 or so on campus. There won't be that many this fall, but that's how many we have enrolled. And with our online programs, we have over 60,000 students. So we're a very large university, and we love the mission of serving the students we serve. Non-traditional campus. Many of our students work, an average of 28 hours a week. But it's a great place to be, and I thank you for the opportunity to be part of this panel.
Oh, Will. I think you're on mute, Will.
Okay, now let's go to Corrine Phaeton, Chancellor of Texas Women's University.
Sure, thank you, Will. And me too, I'm really grateful to be on this panel. So my name is Corrine Phaeton. My accent is from Belgium, just in case you wonder. But I'm the President and Chancellor of Texas Women's University. And the main campus is located in Denton, and then we have a campus in Dallas and a campus in Houston. We have about 16,000 students. We have something in common with UTD, and that is that we have a very large graduate program. About 30% of our students are at the graduate level, which is high for compared to the average university. We also a Hispanic serving institution, and as our name will tell you is that we have a large student body that is female. About 90% of our students are women, but we still have 10% women, men, and they love their experience at TWU. We are ranked among the 6th most diverse in the country. About half of our students are Pell eligible, half of our students are first generation, and we are a majority institution. In other words, the majority of our students are coming from diverse backgrounds. Something that we are proud of is that 85% of our students within the first year of graduating from TWU either are employed or going on to graduate school. So that's a pretty good statistic. And they earn then the second highest salary in Texas, so that's not bad either. Let's see what else. A lot of our programs are in the health-related fields. That's where we have a lot of highly ranked programs, but we also have very highly ranked programs in some of the liberal arts, like in dance, for example, which would be unexpected, or music therapy. I think I mentioned earlier, we're also a Hispanic serving institution, and we have a lot of doctoral programs. That is something that distinguishes us from a lot of other institutions who offer health-related programs. We have a lot of the doctoral programs, so we prepare a lot of the faculty in fields like nursing, OT, PT, etc. So thank you for giving me that opportunity.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Faden. And now we'll finish up with Dr. Joe May, Chancellor of Dallas College.
Well, thank you very much, and it's great to be on the panel with these great friends and collaborators. I really appreciate also, Will, the relationship with D Magazine, and thank you for your support of providing internships for students. And I have to say, Harry, in your background, Hunt Consolidated has been one of our strongest partners with providing internship opportunities for students, and we really appreciate that in the business community. And we certainly appreciate the relationship and the collaboration with both TWU and University of Texas at Arlington. Our students start here with us, but most finish with one of the great institutions in the North Texas area. I'd say, Corinne, I don't have a cool accent like you do. Mine is all East Texas, and where I grew up. I started in this district over 40 years ago. But really proud to see some of the changes that are occurring and aligning us to be in a better position to serve the needs of Dallas County and North Texas. As noted, a new name, Dallas College, yet it already, I think, to a lot of people feels very comfortable because they've already seen us, even though we with Brookhaven College and Richmond College and Eastfield, we'll still have the campuses in serving the needs of the various communities. But still, students enrolled with us often as though we were a single institution, taking classes from all of our locations. So we've made that easier as well. And also new this fall is the baccalaureate granting status as we start an early childhood baccalaureate degree granting program, which we'll be working very closely with K-12 as we have in the past to help meet those needs going forward. On one hand, we serve about 165,000 students each year. That's really not as important, I think, as that we do it in collaboration with others, knowing that our students often start with us and complete elsewhere or work with us in order to get a job. We think those relationships are critical and look at how we can grow and ensure. And I think we'll probably get into that today as some of the challenges of collaboration in a COVID environment where it's probably even more important than ever.
All right. Sorry, my dog's losing her mind. Okay, well, we're going to hop into the questions now. Want to just encourage you guys and let you and our attendees know that I'm not a complete newbie to the education world. Before journalism, I was actually a teacher and a coach for like 8 years. So I actually taught at the college level somehow for a year, and high school and middle school. And a lot of my students are actually in college right now, and so it's been interesting kind of chatting with them, or if I see them, around the neighborhood or whatever, asking them how things are going, what's going on. It's a totally new experience for them, and something I don't have any experience with, and can't really offer them a lot of guidance in regard to, being in college during COVID. So hopefully there's a lot to learn here with our questions. So let's get into it. These first few are going to be for everyone. So we'll start with you, Ms. Payton. So the question is, what are the top 3 things that you've learned as an institution since COVID-19 shelter-in-place orders hit? And how do you think they will influence how you operate moving forward?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I suspect that all of us have endured a lot of daunting challenges during this pandemic. But I would have to say that out of the top 3 things that we have learned that we would and really open our eyes is the importance, for me, number 1, the importance of communication. And you might say, of course, we all always have known this was important. But during this pandemic, it really became all the more obvious how important it was to keep the whole community connected on campus and with the various campuses that we have. And I'm sure Joe has experienced the same thing. So sharing insights, having timely important information that we share, etc. I chose to do this on a daily basis. I would send out a daily message to the whole campus. And what I quickly learned is, yes, it's important to share information, but just as important was really to amplify the stories of other people on campus. So since people were sheltered at home, they really didn't have an opportunity to learn and hear other people's experiences. And you become sort of isolated. So sharing these stories from different parts of the campus and how people actually were coping with the pandemic. And it helped everyone sort of calibrate their own experience as opposed to take it out of proportion and out of context. So when you hear the various perspectives, how students are experiencing things, faculty, staff, etc., it really helped connecting the whole community. And I found it extremely valuable. And I think the whole community found it really, really beneficial and really got into the whole part about sharing stories. The second thing I would say that we learned, I think we'll all agree that this has sort of pushed us, light years into the future. In other words, things that we were sort of slowly doing, higher ed has the reputation of being sort of slow. Well, this just pushed us forward, right? With the whole need to embrace technology and virtual environments. And so things that we were probably resisting and slower to embrace, all of a sudden, we had to engage with. And I use the word embrace intentionally because I would say at first probably people were, well, this is a temporary thing. You sort of resist the change. Nobody likes change. But we all know that the only thing you can really control is your attitude towards something. And so the moment you start embracing this new normal and embracing the technology and a new way of doing things, and you start exploring how to do them better, how to really leverage them for better instruction, how to use Zoom and all kinds of activities to really even have a richer experience for the students. So I think that was a really important aha moment. And I would say the third one for me, and I know this is gonna make you laugh, but as a 6'2" woman, I can tell you that one size does not fit all. And so this became really apparent during the pandemic. One size is not good for everyone. So some people really wanted to stay away from campus, even in the fall now for health reasons, etc. But some of our students really need the campus because of food insecurity, because lack of access to technology, all kinds of things. And so it is different. The reality is different for everyone, and everyone is experiencing this differently. And also we realize the connection, the interdependence that we have. So for example, K-12, we all know the K-12 setting is going to mandate pretty much what's going to happen, right? So if kids can't go back to school, it's really hard for parents to go to campus if they're students and they have kids, or the economy and whatnot. So we really, it underscored that connectedness, that interdependence that we have. And it reminds me of an African philosophy that I've often actually referred to in my communications with the campus, and it's called Ubuntu. And it means I am because you are. And so our existence is completely tied to one another and interconnected. And I think this pandemic has made this really, really obvious. Whether you think about it on an economic level, on a personal level, all of it. So those are my top 3 ahas that I think are going to change the way we move forward, actually.
That's great. Thank you. I love that piece about Ubuntu. I am because you are. That's a great way to go about life, really, but also leading institutions. Dr. May, how about you? Can you tell us a few things that you've learned and how it will impact things moving forward?
Sure. No, thank you very much. And certainly a lot of what Corrine shared. I suspect all of us are, particularly as it relates to the communication piece, is incredibly important, and learning how to communicate in this environment. But let me hit three that were important learning, I think, for us. One, we have some great heroes among our faculty and staff and other employees. While we were aware of what was going on in the environment, the speed at which we had to react was actually very quickly. It was while this was certainly a health the pandemic as a health disaster, we reacted much like it was a natural disaster, a hurricane or a storm or some other event, and with our folks working around the clock to transition 82,000 credit students from face-to-face basically to online instruction, 15,000 courses in just a matter of days. With agreeing to folks working 24 hours to make that change so that students wouldn't lose out on learning opportunities. We didn't want them to lose a single day, a single minute of having that available to them. And our folks understood how important that was, and really pulled together. Many of them canceling leave, many of them because it hit during spring break for us. So they stayed home rather than to go visit family and others to make this possible for our students. Secondly, we are incredibly worried about students. Turns out students are both adaptive and resilient, and sometimes more than we give them credit for. They helped us figure out the solutions to many of the challenges that were there. They knew the problems that they were having, and then helped guide us at how we could best assist them. It's no secret that in Dallas, they're sometimes by choice, sometimes by geography, but there is a digital divide. And we see this as an equity issue. We saw this before the pandemic, and during and now we see this as a real barrier to being able to provide educational opportunities to everyone. And it's not that often internet access is not available to them at their homes, it's that they don't have the resources to subscribe and to take advantage of those opportunities. So just accessibility is not the big issue as much as it is a resource issue, an equity issue, and how we make that. And so we really, this kind of ties into the third, I guess, lesson, and maybe spend a little bit more time on this one, because we realize that the lens through a campus of having students show up, and whether it be on the campus or face-to-face to access services, has certainly been important. That high-touch engagement has been a real strength of Dallas College throughout its history. It's one of the things that all institutions pride themselves on. Even with our heavy online enrollment, we still really regarded that engagement as being powerful and important. But we realized that we really hadn't aligned our services to communicate or to engage in this environment. So if you see a web page today, going back a few months ago, very different from what it was then. You'll see right off the bat a question: stressed and overwhelmed by what's going on. Here's how you access mental health services. Hunger, as Dr. Payton mentioned as well. Here's how you can get access to food, even in this environment. Need additional help with class because you're not familiar with the online environment. Here's where you go to get this help. And really looking at how do we accommodate different needs. And what we discovered in that, we can actually do some things better than we could before. Often in a face-to-face environment, our folks would tell us up to 60% of appointments would get missed because life gets in the way of our students. They're all working and they're all going to college at the same time. Well, in the virtual world, it was easy to accommodate that. So now we have virtually a 90% engagement and being able to respond to students by our advisors, by our mental health specialists, by those providing academic support, engaging faculty and others. So as we look down the road, we've learned that some of what we do in face-to-face is going to be important and remain, but some of what we've learned can actually be done better in a remote or virtual world. Not that one necessarily supplants the other, but for the needs of students, sometimes having it on demand available is actually better for their needs. So the learning has been important because, again, we're listening to students. They're telling us now what they need, and they're adapting to the new environment as fast as we are able to adapt.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I think it's also interesting just how it seems that the crisis is probably making a lot of these institutions realize that they were responsible or a part of the student's life in a much greater way than just academic instruction or listening to a lecture. Right? We talk about housing, talk about community, talk about health, food. So that's super interesting that those have become such important parts. So let's finish off with Mr. Dombroski. You want to help us out, just help us learn a little bit about kind of what your takeaways are from the COVID pandemic and how it might impact things for you guys moving forward?
Yeah, our experience is very similar to the other two panelists. And I would say my number one takeaway, and it's something you just alluded to, was how vulnerable our student population was and how much they depend on the campus operations. Mm-hmm. As I've said, we're a non-traditional student base. A lot of our students work. A lot of them are raising their families while they work. And what we did right after we exited campus and went to lockdown, we sent out a survey to all of our students. And we got a lot of responses back. And when you read the stories of what they were coping with or having to cope with, it was really impactful. I mean, like you said, some of them didn't have access to the internet. They used the college campus for that. Their devices, as Joe mentioned, they didn't have the right devices. They were having to share devices. Some of our students have younger brothers and sisters. They're competing with devices and internet time with their siblings. Our students weren't the ones who are going home and living in their parents' basement or bedroom and getting things done. That wasn't ours. We had students struggling trying to keep they were virtual doing their job, but their spouse may have been an essential worker and had to go to work, so they were forced to try to raise the kids, work at home, and go to school. I mean, it was really tough. We had students who, didn't have enough money to go home. So the university rallied around these kids, and based on these surveys, we were able to provide a lot of the services the students need, and got back to the adaptability. Our students really adapted once we knew what help they needed, and we could get them that help. So that was really very impactful. The second part, again, this has been talked about, was the need going forward. I agree. We've kind of gone light years ahead from the use of technology, and that's going to really benefit our students in the future. The one size does not fit all. The need to continue with different modalities going forward, whether it's a hybrid class, and we have in our campus, we have 3 different types of hybrid classes we're going to offer, but the need to more customize our class offerings to make it easier for students to come to school and attain their degree. That's going to continue. And the other thing is just a better use of technology. I think Joe mentioned this. One thing we found out was, advising services work quite well virtually. Typically we had everybody come into campus, and like Joe said, we'd have appointments being missed. I was worried about our advising services and how that would work, but to be honest with you, they've worked wonderfully. And in fact, we'll stay virtual even when we come back to fall for the most part. But what that also is going to allow us to do is expand that. Now we can have some advisors work longer at different hours. They're not all 8 to 5. We can have them work different hours so they're more accessible to students. And eventually I assume that we'll be to a point where it's almost 24-hour advising, and students will be advised almost any time of the day. And that's what technology is going to open up. And we probably wouldn't have gotten there for another 5 years if we hadn't been forced to deal with this. So those are kind of my, very similar to what the other panelists said, but those are kind of my 3 takeaways.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and you guys all three mentioned technology, right? That's just become a bigger part of all of our worlds. We're doing this panel virtually instead of in person, right? And you mentioned both some drawbacks as well as some advantages to those technological, I don't know if they're advancements, but now we're using these tools in a different way. Is there anything that you haven't already mentioned in regard to technology solutions or teaching solutions that help you guys fulfill your mission as an academic institution? Benefits of online learning versus in person? Anything you didn't mention earlier that you'd like to add? So we'll start with you, Dr. May. You want to just weigh in and kind of zoom in on the technology piece for learning?
Sure, and I do think we're as Harry just mentioned there, realizing that we're using kind of traditional technologies even with our advisors and others, and so we're really looking at how we can now adopt new platforms that we really weren't even thinking of looking at before. We're really thinking now more like we would a CRM engagement. How do we make this available 24/7? How do we anticipate some of the needs that are out there? What can we learn now that we're collecting this through technology and other ways to really anticipate those questions and concerns and issues that might arise, so that in fact we're able to get ahead of the game and help students navigate more quickly and easily. One of the things too that we're seeing, that we're not alone in discovering the importance of technology, and I'm really appreciative of a few entrepreneurs and others in the space that have taken the last 5 months to think of new ways to engage students, both in the classroom and outside the classroom. And a lot of this technology is in pilot stages now, but I think we're going to see this really used more fully long term. We've implemented, again, if you go to our web page and you hang around there for a few seconds, you'll see our chatbot engage you at that point, which is artificial intelligence, really again learning from what students and members of the communities and others are engaging, so that we in fact are in this remote world able to do an even better job. Our questions today are a little different than they were in the past, and making sure that we're attentive to that. And let me just mention online. I mean, all of our institutions have been in the online space. That's been a competence that we have, and we've always really not had to balance. We chose to balance because of the needs of students. Some students prefer a face-to-face, and we did see some students could not adapt to the online courses as we made that transition, and we did see some students dropping out in certain areas. So our question is, if we're going to continue with that as the primary modality of going forward, and for us we are, we made that a decision early on that we would be primarily online for the fall, and now we said we will be into the spring semester as we look at those needs. We anticipate out of 15,000 classes, we're only going to have probably 2,000 that would be face-to-face. So the majority of what we're doing will be in the online space. We're adding 40 degrees online complete new degrees during this time as well, because of the needs of students and their desire not just to take courses, but to get their complete degrees in this environment. And that really gets to their concern about health, safety, well-being, and as well as not wanting to lose the education. There's a lot of talk about students taking a gap year. Well, we for a lot of our students, that would be meaning they will never get an education. If we don't engage them coming right out of high school, when you're coming from high poverty, the lower socioeconomic backgrounds, unfortunately, it takes just a little bump in the road for them to be permanently derailed. And we're all aware of that. All of us serve needy students. Our demographics, actually, of these three institutions are very similar. The median family income of our institutions are all very similar. meaning that we're not serving wealthy students, we're serving individuals that are working class families, many of them the first generation going to college. And we're very proud to be a part of that and to partner as well. But technology in today's world, it means that we can't rely on what we were doing in the past. We really do have to be thinking and looking at new options, new opportunities. And fortunately, we've got some help with others outside of education that are thinking about that as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. Now, I know you mentioned it earlier, Mr. Dombroski, just sort of the advantages and disadvantages of highly online learning. Do you have anything else to kind of add, zooming in on, just how technology might, you mentioned sort of provide some convenience in some ways, but also leave you susceptible to distractions because you're in your house and the dog and the kids and your job, and how are students balancing all those things?
Yeah, I think going forward that, it's more of what we've already talked about. Technology is going to allow us to be more flexible and to be able to customize our course offerings. One of the things we found, there are some students who engage more online. Maybe it's the anonymity or perceived anonymity, but the student who didn't raise their hand in class is now participating more in a virtual context. So everyone learns differently, and I think technology will allow us to basically enhance and leverage their skill sets and their personalities to learn. I think one of the things that we're going to be really focused on is going forward, face-to-face doesn't just have to be in the classroom. So we can combine technology to use some of the teaching online, but then bring people together more in the collaborative environment when they have to. Another thing we're focused on, instead of, in addition to using technology for like advising services, when you think about being able to have less people on campus because some of them are taking online classes, you free up a lot of space. And space is always a problem, at least at UTA. You can free up some more space and build out more collaborative space once the virus is eradicated. But, we can build out more collaborative. When students are on campus, they have more spaces to interact with each other. So those are the kind of things that we're going to be trying to leverage technology on. So.
Thanks. Dr. Phaeton, we'll finish with you. Do you have any sort of additions about students dealing with technology, advantages, disadvantages, how that's impacting folks?
Well, I just would underscore what my colleagues have already said, but I think it's this idea that in the spring here, we all was forced to get on platforms, do online learning, quickly change everything, our advising, and now it sort of has thrown the doors wide open to being creative and innovative with it. And I think that's what Dr. May and Dean Dombroski were talking about. It's really engaging now. It's all of a sudden like, wow, we have this, the sky's the limit. We are having little robots meeting students at the admissions office. It's basic. The technology was always there, but we never thought of using it. But now the need has presented itself, and we are being creative in what we do with it. So whether the chatbots in advising, whatnot. In terms of instruction, what I would say also is that one thing we've learned that, and I think Dean Dombroski just alluded to this too, that you can have a combination, right? It doesn't have to be all or nothing. And even if it is online, so online could mean asynchronous, meaning you watch something at whatever time that's convenient for you, or synchronous, just like we're doing today, at the same time as it's happening live. And so we see a lot of hybrid classes where students do things ahead of time. Maybe they watch some TED Talks or read some material, and then during the synchronous online, virtual face-to-face, I will call it, still face-to-face, but it's virtual. They debrief the constructs, they really analyze, synthesize, and in a way, the learning is deeper because you really take what you've read, looked at, etc., and now think about it. And so critical thinking, diving deeper in the material. And for the faculty, it's almost harder because you're not the sage on the stage anymore. You really facilitate learning, which is what it's supposed to be about. So I feel like even in that area, technology has really pushed us in getting better at that. And so I think we will see a lot of innovation moving forward.
Yeah, that's super interesting. It reminds me of that sort of that concept of the flipped classroom that I know I was,
Yes,
big on when
absolutely.
I-
It's exactly that. Yeah.
You have that asynchronous sort of engagement. You can watch the lecture whenever, you can do the reading, but our face-to-face time, this is really for discussion or for synthesis. I'm not walking in and having to just absorb a lecture. I can do that whenever, right? Because it's recorded. So I think that opens up, right, a lot of some of these sort of virtual face-to-face interactions, which I think makes things really interesting for students. Okay, well, so we'll shift gears a little bit and talk some about sort of career preparedness, right? I think in North Texas market, pre-pandemic world, whenever that was, a lot of the business community's focus was really recruiting talent, trying to develop those people or attract talent. And now with economic devastation in all areas, DFW's no different, though it might be a little better in some areas. There's a little bit of a shift, right? Applicants who are out of work are facing a lot of competition. So my question for you guys, and we'll start with you, Mr. Dombroski, just how has that shift from, businesses worried about recruiting talent to now applicants are the ones worried competing with everyone else who's out of a job or graduating or whatever. How does that shift change the way you guys are thinking about and preparing your students for their careers and kind of entering the corporate pipelines in North Texas and around the country?
Yeah, I mean, things have certainly changed. I think we forget sometimes. I mean, it seems like we've been in this mode forever. It's really only been about 6 months. So you're still dealing with kind of the new normal, if you will. We still think that, the fundamentals of that a student needs looking for a job, being technically competent, being able to effectively communicate and be able to adapt to changing circumstances are tried and true, and those haven't changed. What may have changed, though, is how you implement those in a virtual or near virtual world. For example, maintaining self-initiative, communication in a virtual world is different, of course, than it is face-to-face. It's harder to read people. Creating impact virtually with people, managing personal resilience, showing people how through this mode, if you will, how your skills can translate. Also, things that people are going to have to look for is you're going to have to show your adaptability, because you may now be interviewing for a job not in the degree that you thought you were going to be. You may be looking. Some of the traditional companies are having either hiring freezes, or they're trying to figure out where they are dealing with their own employees before they can look at hiring people. What we're encouraging students to do, to be open to various opportunities and open to different options that may be presented to them. Maybe things they haven't considered before. Maybe your plan wasn't to go to work for Amazon, but maybe it should be. So it's going to change. You need to be open for relocation. And again, I talked about it. I think they need to be really looking at how to showcase their adaptability, and especially in the reality of the potential changing times that we have. And we are, some students are trying to do, well, let's just wait this out and see. Once it's over, we'll go back in. We're highly discouraging that. We're telling our students, get out there, keep looking, contact employees, be adaptable, and look at opportunities that perhaps you hadn't considered before. Because as Joe mentioned, it doesn't take long if you kind of get out of the stream. It doesn't take long to get, kind of off kilter. So we're encouraging our students to stay engaged and continue to search. There are jobs out there. You just got to keep, it's just a different way to finding them right now.
Yeah, that's a great point. Dr. Payton, you want to chime in on just how you guys are thinking about preparing graduates for, what might be a much more difficult and competitive sort of, getting a job, career environment?
Yeah, so actually during the spring, we have a very active career connection center, and what we did is we took that entirely virtual, obviously a new website, but online appointments, etc. What we've been talking about, but we've all even organized panels for our first generation students on how to navigate the workforce, and even pulled off a virtual career and internship fair, which was extremely successful. We had no idea. But it seemed that our partners, the industry and employers, et cetera, were really interested in participating in that. Also created some scholarships for internships. One of the challenges for students that come from lower socioeconomic background is to engage in internships that are unpaid. So making sure that they have paid internships, and that really oftentimes opens the doors. We even had virtual internships. So it's been really interesting to see our partners collaborating with us. One of the big challenges, and again, I talked about that interdependence, that Ubuntu before, and this really underscores here. A lot of our majors, about half of our majors, are in the health-related fields. So that connection with the hospitals and the healthcare providers and making sure that they work with us in terms of having clinical placements and how we engage the students. We're preparing the future workforce in those environments, and it takes us working together to have those clinical placements and make sure that we do all we can to make sure they're safe, but also that they have a really productive experience. Something that we have focused on that's unique to our brand, I guess, is this focus on women's leadership and entrepreneurship. So during the pandemic, we gave out $1 million in grant program to help women-owned businesses that were impacted negatively by the coronavirus, and trying to keep them afloat, and taught a lot of entrepreneurship classes and things to help them, seminars to help them staying afloat. And so really focusing on that women leadership, both in the business world and entrepreneurship, as well as in politics. So that's been a big emphasis during the pandemic, and then we are obviously going to continue doing in the future. And hopefully that will position them also better in terms of engaging. We see a lot of students that instead of going to the traditional, which my colleagues already mentioned, are now thinking of starting their own business, right? So, I mean, you just think differently. So how can we empower them and prepare them to do that well?
Yeah, it's a great point. Having dealing with interns and having taught high school and read a lot of sort of first draft resumes and first draft cover letters, I know that career preparedness piece is always big, especially now in a much more competitive environment. Dr. May, I imagine your students are also maybe thinking about, some are going into jobs, some are looking to transfer, but I imagine there's still that a little bit added pressure now because of the pandemic for those folks. So can you talk a little bit about how you guys are helping folks who do want to transition from Dallas College, maybe straight into the workforce, what that preparedness is going to look like moving forward?
Sure, and let me kind of address, there are really several things, and it's kind of like Corinne said earlier today, there's not a one-size-fits-all. One of the things that you see happen in any crisis is that jobs are eliminated, and that has happened in North Texas, where we've seen them just going away. And that impacts our students in that a large number of our students, almost all of our students, are working while they're going to class. So they've been impacted, as has their entire families in some of these cases been impacted when jobs are lost. The second thing that happens, though, are new jobs are created at the same time. And the ability to quickly communicate that is a challenge. We basically are looking often at long-term strategies with our programs of how we prepare students, and yet now they're facing a couple of short-term decisions that they need to make. One, the employers need help right away and are feeling desperate, and secondly, the students are looking for work as well. So when we surveyed our students, we continue to do this on a regular basis, the need for short-term certifications has risen to the top of their list. They are looking, but they want it not just for short-term benefit. They want it to have meaning long-term in areas where there are jobs being created. And I think the challenge there is to bring that together. So if you look at our website, something that we used to kind of have buried, if you're a student looking for a job, now that's on the front page of our website, so that we can help connect those employers together with students better, and also listen to our employers to make sure that we're able to provide the types of certifications that they're looking for. And there are about 20 that we've identified. I mean, just kind of one point. You don't think about this, but in North Texas right now, for example, swimming pool installations that are at an all-time high. kitchen remodeling is an all-time high. Other things that have shifted as a result of this, and those are just a couple of examples. It gets further than that in a lot of areas. So that's part of our challenge, is to communicate and get students prepared for those jobs.
Yeah, it's a great point. Okay, we have just a few, about 14 more minutes left, so I think we're going to shift to some of these audience questions. We won't be able to get to all of them, attendees, so apologize in advance. But there's been several questions sort of in the realm of student engagement, right? And maybe that looks like students who dropped for a semester, or students who are now online and lost in the virtual world, right? I imagine at some point, you guys can't just throw down a table in the quad and put some pizzas out and students will come and learn and hear what you have to say. That option is not really viable anymore. And so I think folks are curious, and I'm curious just to see what kind of innovative approaches you are taking with just engaging students. And that might be new students, how you're engaging prospective freshmen, how you're engaging students who maybe disappear for a semester or drop for a year, or those gap year students, or it could just be enrolled students, how you're kind of thinking innovatively about putting your hook in them, whether that's from a teacher perspective or from an admin perspective. Can you guys talk a little bit about that? Maybe start with you, Mr. Dombroski.
Yeah, we're doing various things. One thing, actually, yesterday and today we're hosting a listening session for our students, where we're talking about our campus repopulation plan, and we're hosting a listening session to talk about what's going to happen when they come back to campus, get their questions, address their concerns. Throughout the spring and the early part of the summer, my staff has been reaching out to students. There was a concern, quite honestly, that we could see a significant drop in enrollment. Right now, knock on wood, our enrollment's just running a little bit ahead at the College of Business where it was last year at this time, which we're very thankful for. I think our students, we were behind for a while. I think our students were wondering what the fall would look like before they committed. But we've been in constant touch with our students through our advisors and our recruiters, trying to address their concerns. So we've been doing that. Of course, earlier this year, with all the social awareness issues that were out there, we had listening sessions with our students about that. As the other institutions are here, we're minority majority at the College of Business too. So we listen to them there. So we've done a lot of engagement there. And interestingly enough, it's the one thing we got back from our student survey was students were very concerned about online learning. And while the majority still want face-to-face, or at least some form of face-to-face, 40% of our students now want online learning. So those are the things we've learned from the engagement. So those are the types of things we're doing to try to reach out and stay in contact with our students.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Dr. Phaeton, you want to talk a little bit about innovative student engagement at TW?
Sure, and your question is a great one. And it's not an easy answer, because we sort of have to reinvent, right? And you very accurately talked about different types of engagement, whether it's before the student comes to campus, instead of doing the campus tour, right? You're going to do the virtual campus tour. How do we really communicate, engage with them? Or if they take a break, and I want to underscore what Dr. May was saying earlier, that we do know from research, if they get disconnected for a while, especially if they're in the workforce, it's really hard to get back on track. So whatever we can do to keep them connected and moving along is important. But then you raised the question, what do we do for the students who are on campus, right? So not everyone is going to be online. So we have to think about engagement with them and communication, social media, all of those kinds of things. But even for the students on campus, so now we have social distancing and the masks and all of these different kinds of things. So when you start thinking about the types of activities, let's say for first year students, freshmen, the kinds of things that we used to do to build community for that first year group is now going to be different. The block parties, the whatever, where you try to build the social connections, make them feel at home. Well, now, we have to completely rethink that, taking a lot of things outdoors. So you just rethink everything that you do. How can we engage those students while they're on campus and yet keeping them safe and not expose anybody else and yet give them the ability to create that social connection. So do we do a virtual bingo night? I don't know. I mean, you know, there's just a variety of things that our student life people are really being really creative around. And I would say also in terms of communication, one thing we have found is that this generation of students, it's really important also to connect with the parents. And so actually during this pandemic, we've been communicating with parents a lot more than we ever were. And that's really been helpful and really good to continue that engagement, because they also will help their students, you know, with that engagement. So it's just been really interesting how to rethink what we're doing.
Sure. Yeah, Dr. May, I know when I was teaching high school, I know I always encouraged my students who were sort of on that edge of, you know, am I going to college? Am I working? And was always pushing them, hey, apply, do your FAFSA, right? Get engaged, like talk to someone at the school, get, you know, allow them to engage you so that, you know, that you're just more likely to be there. You're more likely to enroll. You take that gap and I would hear, you know, oh, you know, Mr. Maddox, I'm going to work for a year. I'm going to work for a semester and then we'll see. And, you know, that's a great option for some, but like statistics show that a lot of times those students aren't coming back. So maybe you talk a little bit about what that engagement piece looks like from a community college standpoint.
Sure, and you're exactly right. You know, one of the big challenges that we've seen is that there's kind of this space that no one owns. That's that period of transition from high school into college. The high schools have got them prepared and hope that they're ready to go, and the colleges are there ready to receive the students, but they often don't have that support in that transition to get there. So that's really been a lot of what we've had to provide extra support for during this time. We've put in a whole new call center that's just simply geared for nothing but engaging those students coming out of high school, to give them that personal touch, to let them know that, and quite honestly, we don't really care where they're going to college. We just want them to go somewhere. And if they're talking to us about UTA or TWU or elsewhere, we're happy to help guide them because we really think everyone is better off in college than not in college. And so we want to be supportive of that. The other is the realizing that our own students, we had 82,000 credit students this spring when the COVID pandemic hit. We called all 82,000 to talk to them about their situation, what they were dealing with. And if we couldn't reach all of them by phone, we engaged, reached out to 56,000 of those with text and engaged 19,000 of those on a regular basis, just to let them know that we were here to help support and manage that. And I think a lot of times, Will, it's just a matter of letting them know that somebody cares, is paying attention, that we think it matters whether or not they're going to college, and we're willing to work with them to help solve the problems. Because as was said earlier, every single individual faces unique challenges, and our goal is to really help them navigate those and get through it. And we, you know, we can do that, but it does mean thinking more about how we deal with a community rather than just individual students. And I think it's bigger than our individual institutions.
Yeah, it's a great point. So probably have time for maybe one more question for each of you guys. There was a question I think, and I'm going to ask it because I think it applies to really any leaders of any organization. You know, you look at your employees, your staff, and there's probably a spectrum of technological comfort, shall we say, the ability to, you know, how many teachers or how many folks at even at, you know, D Magazine had done a virtual conference, had done a virtual meeting before all this, you know, it's all skyrocketed, right, in every profession. So this question, I guess for you guys is sort of thinking about your staff, your teachers, your professors. How are you adjusting to their strengths and weaknesses in kind of this new virtual world? We start with Dr. Phaeton. You want to tell us a little bit about how you're thinking about, you know, you probably have some 28-year-old professors who just got their PhD, and you probably have some 68-year-old professors that don't want to have anything to do with Zoom. So how do you kind of navigate that space as a leader?
So when it comes to the technology, really, actually, we spend a lot of time. We have a really large office learning and teaching with technology. So they've done lots and lots of training in the spring and during the summertime. Lots and lots of hands-on training for people at all different levels and using different technologies and whatnot. So I feel really good in that regard. And I mean, we were probably blessed in a way that TWU started online learning like over 20 years ago. I mean, we were clearly in the pioneers when we were doing starting online learning. So we already had a robust experience and set up for that with structural designers and whatnot. But even with this new setup, like really how do we capitalize on Zoom and all of these other kinds of technologies, our folks have done a tremendous job in really offering a lot of training, a lot of webinars. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of hours, hundreds of faculty have really participated in that. But I would say it's more than just the technology. When I talked earlier about the one size does not fit all, it's the same, it holds for the students, but it's the same for the faculty and staff. Not everyone feels comfortable coming back, or they have certain circumstances that, you know, makes it that they can't come back, whether they're immunocompromised or somebody in the family, or like I said earlier, if K-12 isn't opening up, then, you know, they have kids at home. So, I mean, there's all kinds of different settings. So we're trying to be as flexible as possible with the faculty and staff, telecommuting where possible. And if the faculty really can't come to the campus, then we need to be adjusting and have that. My favorite word of the year is fluidity. And so, and my last message to the campus in terms of looking at the fall, I said, we need to solidify our fluidity. And really, if I had to summarize the whole year, that's really what it's all about. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm going to shift questions a little bit for you, Mr. Dombroski, this next one. There was an entrepreneur dropped a question in about sort of approaching colleges or approaching universities with you know, with learning tools or technological solutions. I'm not exactly sure if that's part of your purview, but I imagine some of that comes across your desk at time as far as, hey, I have this new learning tool, this technology, or this module that I'd like to use. Do you have any advice to entrepreneurs out there or business owners out there who would like to sort of serve in that space about engaging folks at the university level?
Yeah, I mean, I get, you know, I'm always interested, and I think most of the deans at the university, in fact, all the deans are very interested in any other type of online learning or any type of apps that may be out there, anything that can improve the learning experience. We're all interested in that, including our central administration. We have people interested in that. So I would encourage anybody who has any ideas, drop me an email, drop the provost an email, and, just reach out, because that's the way things get done. But we're all interested in that. And another good way of going is going through faculty. Our faculty are very inventive. They're very interested in different ways of learning. So contact a faculty member and go through them. Any of them will work.
Yeah. Good. I have one last question for Dr. May before we go. And I know Dallas College has campuses all over the county and all over the city. Has there been any thought, as you think about social distancing or spreading people out, of using other spaces, or is all the different campuses, do you feel like you have enough, or are you saying, hey, can we use this convention center or this gym or community center to have a class where we can space out or engage and do something closer to person? Has that happened at all?
Well, and just kind of related to that, and the facilities and space question is an important one. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we shifted primarily to online for the fall term. Like the other institutions here, we offer, for example, a large number of health-related programs. We knew some of those had to be really face-to-face in some cases, just because of the nature and the requirements, and even some of the accreditors won't let us out of doing them in a face-to-face way. which means we have to spread out. We have to provide additional space. And so we realized we're going to be doubling some of the space, in fact, we were using for some of our programs to accommodate. And yet at the same time, we realized we could shift more into the virtual world as well, freeing up space for that to happen. So it really is us looking at what do we really have to do to provide the best quality of education? And sometimes it is going to be a hands-on, engaging that student, particularly in our career and technical education as we do that. In other cases, we can provide not only as good, but in some cases better remote learning, distance learning, and utilizing technologies for that purpose. So it really is both. I mean, your question about using other space, what we're really trying to do is to leverage what we have for the benefit and manage that going forward. You know, as I said, we elected to go online because we have 40,000 students a day walking through our doors normally. So I want to reduce that down for this term so that we continue to serve that same number of people, but in different ways, but guarantee their health, safety, and well-being while we're doing it.
Yeah. All right. Good to know. Well, looks like we are out of time, but want to thank you guys for being a part of the panel, and want to thank all of our attendees, who I'm sure are all standing up in their homes and offices and giving you a big round of applause. So you can just imagine the cheers washing over you guys right now. But thank you guys for tuning in. Before we go, I want to thank the institutions that helped make this possible. I want to thank Dallas College, Texas Women's University, UT Arlington College of Business. And once again, thank you, Mr. Dombroski, Dr. Phaeton, and Dr. May for joining us. Wishing everyone a safe and productive beginning to the school year and whatever and all the forms that takes. Wish you guys the best, and we will talk to you soon. Thanks again.